Hey, welcome to another edition of Down the Road. Lots to cover today. Like always, Robin Travers is going to join us. She can give us a first-hand glimpse on the ground of what's going on. Robin works with Key 660, and she's the news director there, and can talk about what some of the families are going through because she's been visiting with them in regards to the power outage in northwest North Dakota. Also, we're going to get a chance to visit with Dave Carlsrud. Flooding happening in Valley City. What's the status now in Barnes County? In other words, it's spring in North Dakota, or is it? Many of us still think it's winter, but the poles that snap, the rural electrics that are out of power, this is trying times. This really is. Josh Kramer is someone I saw when he got hired for this job about, 4 years ago, 5 years ago. I can tell you everybody knew they hired the right guy. I mean, Josh is just North Dakota through and through. He knows it. He's the executive vice president of the North Dakota Association of Rural Electric Cooperatives. Let's bring him in. Josh, good to have you coming down the road with us.
Hey, Joel, thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
Whatever you're paying those managers and those linemen, pay them more. You got to talk to those boards out there because people are working really hard to get the power back on.
Yeah, no doubt about it. I mean, I think it's a pretty dire situation. But what the nice thing is, every day progress is being made. I think obviously any electric utility cooperative wants to get out and get the lights back on immediately. But because of the circumstances of the storm, it wasn't safe to get on the roads. And to be on the roads in the middle of the blizzard. So they, as much as they were itching to get out there and handle things right away, that wasn't always a possibility. But now that things have subsided, they're making progress every day. There's boots on the ground. The nice thing about our cooperative network is, those cooperatives that haven't been affected dramatically by the storm, they send their crews. So there's line crews that took off yesterday from Fargo, from to other parts of the state to help the northwest part of our territory out. So all of western North Dakota had outages or experienced outages, and then also the northern tier of the state. And but the worst of it is kind of northwest North Dakota. That's where they're seeing, many of the co-ops there lost over 1,000 poles. They're still assessing, doing line patrols where they're able to, but it's hard to get out to those places. They're doing some. You're using tracked vehicles to get those assessments. They're using, there's word of drones being used to help with the line patrol. But really, the biggest thing that I think they need is the township roads to get opened up and to access those points.
And it really is a community. I know that from my experiences in life, that when something like this happens to one, it really happens to them all. When you think about the logistics, sending a crew from Cass Electric up to Williams County, that's a hike, and yet they're on their way. So I was glad to hear that. You mentioned 1,000 poles. Do you have a good assessment of the co-ops that are affected and what the extent of the damage is?
Yeah, I mean, it could be worse. There could be more out there, but I think 1,000 is a pretty good estimate of what they're at. But like I said, as they get to those places that they haven't been able to, drive by, there could be more to add to the list. The good news is poles have already started arriving. A lot of the cooperatives, they keep on hand, an adequate supply of replacements, and also a lot of the electric suppliers. They have a designated amount of electric equipment, utility equipment that they put aside just for emergency situations. So that's the good news, and it's on the route. It's en route or already at these places.
So the equipment that you need to repair, poles are already arriving. 1,000 poles. Let's just use that as the number. That's a lot of poles. I mean, that is there 1,000 poles sitting there waiting to be used by some supplier, or is there other co-ops that are saying, look, we can send 50 from here or other states? I mean, how does this work to where you all of a sudden can just get your hand on 1,000 poles?
Yeah. I mean, trucks are en route. I think you can put about 80 on a truck, on a semi truck. And I know that I think you had Dale Haugen, manager of Montreal, on the other day, and said that they have 160 on the way. They have a lot on hand as well. but they're just going to keep coming, and they'll borrow from their neighbors. We're getting later into the year. I think April's always a kind of a touchy time, because that's when our as we found out, that's when co-ops, when lines freeze right when you're around that 32-degree mark. That wet snow is what causes the problems, and later we get into the year, the less likely those poles will be needed by the other co-ops, and they can borrow them to others and get replacements when at a later time.
See, and that's the beauty of you guys, Josh. I mean, it really is. That's what's so great about the rural electric community, how you stick up for each other. The technology, though, to do it, the knowledge. And I'm not trying to seg away from the storm. We're going to get back to that a little bit, but I've been to your shop. I know what goes on in Mandan. There's just the training that goes into resetting these poles and the investment you make. I've got a nephew working for one of your co-ops down at Dakota Valley Electric. He went through lineman school there. He learned the skills. I have no doubt that, I shouldn't say doubt, I haven't checked with him. He's probably in Williams County right now. But you actually invest in being able to take care of this far beyond just the physical pole insulator type wire type issues.
Absolutely. I don't know if you can see the picture behind me, but we're in the process of building a new line worker training center. For the line worker program through BSC was started in partnership with the RECs in 1970, and for some time we've been looking to improve that, and we're building an indoor training facility for the students that go to line school, but also it'll allow utility workers and our co-op members to come in, during those times, then to do that important safety training. So when things like this happen, they're safe. That's the number one priority of our managers and all cooperative employees, is making sure that that members and the public and our employees all get home safely at night.
Yeah. So here's the other part. People, myself, I'm speaking from experience, we take for granted what you deliver and what the cooperatives bring to us. We just take for granted, and that's a good sign. That's actually a good thing, I would guess, for your managers out there to hear, that when we get up in the morning, we just assume that light's going to switch on. That everything's going to run the way it has before, and everything we do now, more and more and more, counts on electricity to do that. When something like this happens, it's kind of an eye-opener for some of us, that we should be a little more appreciative of those rural electric, the board directors and the people that manage and run and operate. Through all of the bad that you're going through, to some degree, there is that awakening that, hey, this is a multi-million dollar system that a guy's got to respect and take care of, Josh.
You bet. I mean, our distribution cooperatives, they maintain over 64,000 miles of distribution line in the state of North Dakota. That's a lot, and they do it well. It's a complex business, not only from bringing the electricity from the substation to the home or the farm, but also, they're dealing with issues of power supply, and where's that generation going to come from? And we pride ourselves in being reliable. And really, our cooperatives, they maintain over a 99% reliability rate. But there are these things where Mother Nature happens, and Mother Nature's boss, and we can plan and prepare to handle things in a safe manner. But that's kind of the business we're in, is Mother Nature is going to show us that she is in charge. One thing I should mention is when we work with our members, a big part of it is making sure that we're ready for situations, not only for the training, but obviously the governor and declared a disaster in this region. We're expecting a presidential disaster to be declared soon, but that triggers the FEMA dollars to come in. So there's a lot of work that goes into prior to the storm in working to make sure that our FEMA procurement manuals and all these things are up to date. We have pre-approved contractors, so these reimbursements can be made to the cooperative by FEMA, and so it doesn't hamstring the cooperative for years to come.
Josh, paying for it, you just mentioned that. What help might be needed to pay for it? If I were one of these rural electric members, would I be looking at a rate increase? Would I be looking at how to offset some of this, some one-time fees? I know that would be going through my mind if I was a rural electric member, which I am. How you pay for this has to be pretty complex.
Right. And it's too early to tell. I mean, if there'll be a rate increase of that sort. I mean, I think the goal is this is a disaster, and and that's where FEMA comes in. And so we're going to try to get as much of it reimbursed through FEMA as possible. And that's where we as a statewide association work well with our co-ops and work with our state and federal leaders to make sure that, these resources go to the right places and are used well.
Josh, I have to ask you because it's already come at you from members and from the general public. Why are we still putting lines up by pole? Why aren't they being buried in the ground?
Yeah. Cost effectiveness, right? I mean, like I said, we maintain 64,000 miles of distribution lines. I think many of our cooperatives, where it makes sense to put overhead to underground, they do, but it just isn't. The numbers don't work. I think members would see larger rate increases. While this is going out and fixing, what is broke is a big undertaking. But we're also equipped to do that, right? We keep supplies on hand. It's less expensive to string hundreds of miles of line overhead than to put it underground.
Well, and I would add this, that everyone who thinks it's more reliable if you put underground versus overhead, that isn't true. Oftentimes those linemen will tell you that they'll have more trouble with underground than they will have with something, and they can't fix it as quickly as what they can if it's overhead. So all those years of working in the utility, I have a little bias. Digging water lines, I didn't mind that I could see the power line. I liked it because then I knew that I wouldn't hit it. Josh, keep doing what you're doing. Your folks are working so hard. I'm not going to let you go, though, because of where you worked out of. And we did a little of this yesterday on Down the Road. But, every day you got a chance to see a man named David Carruthers, the head of North Dakota Broadband. He was your neighbor in the office. Give people your thoughts now that we've lost David to cancer.
Yeah. David was just a great guy. He was in this very office, I'd say, just over a month ago, and we just had a great conversation. And anytime David came through, he'd sit down and make time for me as a young person and leading an association. He'd offer up his candid advice, and David was a very colorful guy, so he didn't hold back. But I appreciated that about David. He was just a genuine guy, and he's been through a lot of political battles over the years. And, one of the things North Dakota really prides himself on is our broadband deployment that we have and that we're so fortunate to have. And David Carruthers was a big part of that. I think, he was, had been with the North Dakota Association of Telephone Cooperatives, now the Broadband Association, for a number of years. And his leadership is known around the country, and his personality is known by many. I think everybody appreciated, and we're going to all miss David and our visits that we've had.
You bet. And I'm glad to hear you say that. I know we both lost a friend in David Carruthers, but he believed in what you do, bringing utilities to rural North Dakota and making sure we don't get left behind. That opportunity to succeed from the farm, from that homegrown business, that was a big part of what David was. So tell your men and women that are out there fighting, getting that power back on, that we're thinking about them. All the best, and I hope it goes smoothly.
Will do, Joel. And I just want to reiterate that. I mean, we do have line crews out and about. We have emergency responders out and about, help pitching in where they can. We have cooperative employees, but I've just been so impressed by the feedback from people without power. They understand it's hard to, we can't turn the lights on overnight. They understand they're in the storm. They were in the storm. They realize what the task that's ahead of them, and they've just been, very generous in their comments and the patience that they're having towards our co-ops as they're out trying to, make the best of this situation. And I just appreciate that from them, and I appreciate our co-ops and the employees and everybody who is contributing to this effort.
I think at times like this, it's a good time for all of us to remember that the co-op is ours. We're member owned. So, Josh, good to visit with you. Thank you, sir.